the America Happens News on the America Happens Network. Our brave founder, Vem Miller, and myself were at the RNC this last week in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm recovering from it. It was an incredible experience. Pretty much everyone I ever wanted to meet in my entire life was there. But the greatest experience that actually happened was the fact that I could just sit back. I didn't want to ask any serious questions. I didn't want to get controversial because I was an invited guest, and I didn't want to lose my ability to have the pass inside the RNC. So I was able to actually sit back and really be part of the RNC and really experience it firsthand. In the beginning, it was a lot of people who really did not support President Donald Trump years ago, just like Vice President J.D. Vance didn't. But by the end, we were all united. Everyone knows that we have to make sure that President Donald Trump is elected back into the White House in November 2024. He is the only president that will free all of the J6 political prisoners. He's the only president that will free the Christians. He is the only presidential candidate that has promised to really go after the three-letter agencies that I believe Vem Miller, the founder of America Happens, and I both believe that obviously the three-letter agencies are the reason that President Donald Trump was almost assassinated on July 13th, 2024 in Butler, Philadelphia. Now, listen to me. I have so many contacts with so many people who were actually at the assassination attempt on the scene, and we are all working with other independent journalists like myself and Vem Miller, and we will get to the root of what really happened on July 13th. But of course, today in Congress, the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, is of course ditching questions. She's not answering anything. She didn't even bring what the people in Congress asked her to bring to do her hearing today. She basically just said as little as she can say, which is what happens most of the time in Washington, D.C. So my main question to you is, who does Kimberly Cheadle really work for? If she's the director of the Secret Service, who does she answer to? Because when I interview everyone that I possibly can who were actually at the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump on July 13th in Pennsylvania, after I interview them, I realized there probably were two shooters. It's definitely most likely impossible that a 20-year-old kid acted alone. You all know what happened with JFK in 1963, and of course his brother, RFK Jr.'s father. And I have done so much research on that whole assassination, which was successful. Both of those were successful. It's never just a lone shooter. It's always a team, and it's usually always inspired by the three-letter agencies. So I'm going to try to give you some answers today, and I think that one of the biggest answers is switching your phone. It's time to get rid of the iPhone. The iPhone is a huge problem. People told me that in the middle of the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump, their iPhones just stopped working. They couldn't call, they couldn't text. Your iPhone is fully controlled. You need to drop the iPhone and switch all of your phone service to phone123.com. I'm also going to bring in someone who founded this company called the ClearPhone. This is one of the main answers to the overall problem that we have, which is centralization. It's time to become decentralized. So I'm going to bring in Michael Proper. Michael Proper is the founder of the ClearPhone. How are you, Michael?
Life is good. Life is really good.
It's good. Okay, I'm going to make the screen bigger so that everyone can see what's going on. Why did you decide to found and create the ClearPhone?
You know, it actually started with focusing on decentralized systems. So it wasn't even about ClearPhone, or it wasn't about any kind of systems that were in the hand of everyone. It was around decentralized systems. So we focused on back-end infrastructure, servers, networks, gateways, PCs, the things that actually run the systems that humanity operates on. You know, we come from a world of 30 years in the IT sector and spent 15 years helping to build the server network and gateway side of things that runs information technology, primarily in mortgage, title, manufacturing, construction, even pharmaceutical. We did Bayer Pharmaceutical. We did lots of different health exchanges. And our eyes were open to some of the things that were going on. And where things kind of got weird was using Microsoft systems, and we implemented Microsoft, we implemented Cisco. These are both two mainstream big tech companies. And we had customers in all 50 states, 29 countries, and we helped create an industry called the managed service provider industry. We actually partnered with Intel. And what happened was this industry took off. So servers, networks, and gateways for a monthly fee, as well as PCs and printers. About 10 years into it, we actually sold the printer division to Hewlett Packard Enterprise, or Hewlett Packard at those days. But the reason that we started selling and getting out of that industry was it was all focused on centralization. And what we saw was some things that were wrong. We basically helped create the managed service provider industry that managed other people's networks and servers at their locations for a monthly fee. And when we did that, we would actually run their servers from our location, and then we would update their security pattern files, whether it was intrusion detection, content filtering, patching for desktops, patching for servers, and then antivirus at the desktop, antivirus at the servers. And we started to understand that different parts of the world had different virus pattern files. So Trend Micro to many others, Kaspersky in Russia, Trend Micro in China, and then one that came out here in the US, which actually was purchased through, I want to say Intel purchased McAfee, and then McAfee had actually purchased the original owner of CloudStrike. And when we dig into some of the things that are going on there, it'll blow your mind. But the parallel path that I'd really like to turn on for your audience is the parallel path with the human body and the digital ecosystem. So when we talk about digital ecosystem, we're talking about the digital footprint or exhaust that each one of us leaves everywhere we go. Even just sitting right here, like I've got a devices, I've got anything that's listening, anything that you're moving around, you're making phone calls, you're sending text, that's a data exhaust and footprint that you're leaving. And it's like, well, what's the difference between that and then the physical body? And why is it that the organization that actually builds what runs majority of the servers in the world is actually controlling both of them? And what I'm specifically talking about is Mr. Gates. So we actually implemented Mr. Gates technology. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share my screen here real fast. Let's see if I can jump out of here.
This is going to be very interesting because I was stuck at the airport on Friday because of the outages that happened. So really,
it this way, I'm going to actually have these folks kind of set the stage on what the problem was. And then I'll go through and actually help your listeners to understand that what happened with COVID and what happened with Microsoft and what's happening in the physical world with our bodies and the digital world is all the same types of symptoms. So I'm going to just play this real fast. And this is actually the CEO responding to what they're talking about with outages.
According to your statement, it was a single content update that has managed to shut down air travel, credit card payment systems, banks, broadcasts, street lights, 911, emergency around the globe. Why is there not some kind of redundancy or some sort of backup? How is it that one single software bug can have such a profound and immediate impact?
Well, when you look at the complexity of cybersecurity, you're always trying to stay one step ahead of the adversaries. Excuse me. Man, just 1 second, please.
Oh yeah, take a drink of water.
Yeah, sorry.
Sure. According to your statement, it was a single.
Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. What happened was a single point of failure for multiple systems around the world. And I'm going to pull open an ecosystem called digitalworld.earth. And what this is it focuses on really a simple model. And the model is this. We focused primarily on building an operating system called ClearOS Server that runs node infrastructures around the world. And when we look at those infrastructures, they literally span the globe. So this is what the interfaces look like. This directly competes with Microsoft Small Business Server, and it actually killed the whole industry. There's a book written about it. If you don't believe me, go, what is it? Tools and Weapons by Brad Smith. Brad Smith was the chief legal counsel at Microsoft. He's now the president. And by the way, the CEO back in those days, do you know what his name was?
What?
Well, do you know what he said? He actually specifically came out and said, and this is Paul Allen said, when he took over for Bill Gates, Paul Allen said, open source technology is cancer. That's what he used. He says it's cancer in the software industry. Those were his specific words. And when we started getting into this industry, which was way back in 2009, people thought we were crazy. They thought we were ape nuts. You're leaving a wonderful industry that you created for almost a decade. Wonderful business, wonderful team, wonderful market, good profits, good cash flow, and you're jumping into this open source world that basically builds with this Clear Center, this Clear Foundation in 2009, then into this business called Clear Center. And you can kind of see the product that popped out. We partnered with some of the biggest and best manufacturers in the world, but it also ran on any kind of server in the world. So you can see 17 years in development, okay? 154 countries that have the software, and it actually had over 450 deployments. There's 260,000 deployments today. On average, it's 29 users per LAN segment. But why is this important? ClearOS server that basically engages this model is actually a direct competitive and alternative to this nightmare of this outage that we just saw. And when we're talking about an outage, I think it's something there'll actually be more to come. For instance, we had an understanding way back when that if a patch went out and it was actually a Trend Micro antivirus patch that went out and that actually made systems like, in this case today, what happened is a software security update patch went to a Microsoft server, or in some cases desktops, and then it turns into that blue screen of death, right? And it effectively blocks these systems from being able to boot and then running the services. You know, some folks say, well, it took down the airlines, kind of like you were affected by the airlines, right? But it took down actually so much more than the airlines. We're talking about hospitals. We're talking about, you know, simple, normal business, mortgage companies, title companies, manufacturing companies, you know, industries that we rely on around shipping. That's a big thing. When you shut down supply chain around shipping, what do you think then happens in a week or two? One of the things that I find most interesting about this, and I've been trying to tell people this for years, but here's the proof. One of the things that it shut down was the voting systems. So you're starting to see different parts of the world, primarily, you know, when CrowdStrike went down, okay, it actually shut down many different counties that are paying attention to the voting systems. You know, Maricopa County, which is where everything kind of came to a head with the whole last elections, was Arizona with Trump or not. You know, Maricopa County was one of the core, and they're raising a flag. I wish I could find something here. I'll try and search it real quick.
This is so interesting.
Maricopa
so this
County,
all ties in to the way that we are going to vote in November.
See if I can find something just on the fly.
I mean, what's your bottom line? Who's doing this to us and why?
Well, I've already told you a long time ago. If you want, I can jump right to that. Let's see if I can find a real quick slide, because in 3 different slides, it really just summarizes what are we dealing with, how do we solve it, and it's actually ultimately decentralized systems actually solve it. You've got to give the power back to the individuals. They need to hold their assets. They need to hold their voice. And really, what's happening is you have secret combinations. And the combinations right now are in big tech. So what this outage that we saw, I'm not even talking about the assassinations with Trump and other things that are going on, but just this last week, just days ago, you're seeing big tech being compromised by one simple patch file, one security update. And I'm talking, these things are small that they get sent out and it shuts everything down. What's to say it doesn't happen again? What's to say some of these systems don't go back up? But the answer is in society, you get different class distinctions and they go in different circles. Maybe it's big tech, maybe it's big media, kind of like with Hollywood. You've seen this in your world, Corinne. Maybe it ties to pharmaceuticals, maybe it ties to insurance, maybe it ties to oil, maybe it ties to healthcare, supposed healthcare. And then what they do is they work together to go into governments. And I've been saying this before Biden ever got in. They come into these different governments and there's two parts to it. There's a private part on the left and a public part on the right. The public part is how they actually create money. They create money because they've taken over monetary systems within these different countries. And where there's mystery, there's margin, not only in the private secret combinations, but also in the public. For instance, how many US dollars are in the world? How many dollars are in Italy or France or Brazil or Japan? Do they really keep account of what they are? And those countries that do keep account, I would say that their foreign exchange rates, the manipulation is harder to be able to see. But the manipulation at the foreign exchange side of it are simple organizations like the IMF and the World Bank and the Reserve Bank. They're all literally in cahoots. I can sit here and tell you this because I've been in the meetings with them. I've represented countries that say, you know what, we don't want to be a part of these centralized systems. We want to implement systems that are actually for the people. And what we've done is we've deployed decentralized systems as an option for countries, not just for individuals, but for countries. So literally, instead of just having, and there's different types of countries. Some are colonial based, some are kingdom based, some are, monarch based, some are what they call democratic based, some are Republican based. And there's definitely a difference between all of them. But ultimately, hearing the voice of the people, and I'm not just talking about the people holding their own identity or their own assets or their own voice, but the ability for them to actually be able to control who they are and who can actually access their identity. In the Fourth Amendment in the United States, whether your audience is in the United States or out of it, almost all constitutions in the 150 plus countries around the world have literally followed some of the simple human rights that are found within this document. I believe this God-given document. And it talks about privacy and rights, the right to travel, the right to assemble, the right to speech or free speech. And so really all we're talking about are secret combinations that take over governments that then centrally control people. And the way that they're centrally controlling people is through systems like what Microsoft is doing. So a company and they just push it over to this CrowdStrike. And I'd like to dig into what this CrowdStrike really is. Because CrowdStrike, when we look at it, the people behind it are very interesting. Here's an example of people specifically. I don't know, when you were flying, were you flying on Southwest? Because a lot of their servers were basically running Windows 3.1, and they're the only airlines that actually stayed up. Think about that. And one of the other things that's important is the operating system ClearOS server that we run today. So that literally we've dedicated our lives on building this ClearOS server. If we run into it, I want to say I've got a site up on here. This is ClearOS server, right? So people can actually go up. There's a community that can support people. There's different versions of it. They can download it. They can literally, run it all on their own hardware. They can do it for free. But one of the things that's interesting is the base that this is built from is a competitor to Windows. It's called Linux. And the version of Linux is called Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And it was actually purchased by IBM for $34 billion in cash about 4 years ago. And what's crazy is the operating system that we built it from, CentOS, which is a binary replacement from CentOS that creates ClearOS, they literally killed it. IBM killed it. This was a very good business, profitable business, added a ton of value. The space stations run on it. The New York Stock Exchanges run on it. We're talking majority of the systems. Actually, most of the systems that are actually up today that didn't go down with this CrowdStrike issue, that's what you got a counterbalance of Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems and Microsoft systems. Literally 30 years I've been in this industry. And what we did was we took the Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems and we built, off of the CentOS base, this ClearOS Mobile. And so you can see the different releases and timelines and the release notes. And the key is we stopped making the updates as of last month, June 2024. We stopped making the updates probably about 3 weeks before this came out. And we were sitting there saying, we're not going to do more security updates. And so how can your listeners parallel this to the world that we actually live in? We're talking about something that may be nebulous to them when I talk about a simple model around this, which is a server that provides a back end and some apps on it that then connects to a phone on a front end, and the phone operating system, ClearOS Mobile, and the server operating system are actually built to work together, which I believe creates an operating system for humanity. And like this header says, it's the great global reset, so to speak, that humanity's been waiting for, where we can actually take our own data, we can take our own identity, we can take our own financial systems, all commodities, equities, currencies, everything in the financial system, all of the land management, asset management, from your homes to your cars to your land, even to assets, and that ties into the current system. All of it can be in the control of the individual. And that can be basically, for instance, literally for the last 2 years, we have spent almost 2 complete years going around the Pacific Ocean, helping to align the amazing different cultures that are actually already decentralized within Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. They understand within literally 40 billion acres, 25,000 islands, out of the 26 countries that we met with, these amazing countries stood up. From Fiji to Tuvalu to Atui, Samoa, Tonga, Rarotonga, Hawaii, Aotearoa, Vanuatu. These countries, for instance, Vanuatu in their constitution has the word decentralized inside of it. They took their country back from being French occupied, European occupied at the same time. You're seeing other countries that are doing the same thing. They're going to govern themselves. Why? Like Tonga and Samoa, they were already sovereign and independent before any of this. One of the key unique environments is the Hawaiian Kingdom. The Hawaiian Kingdom was actually annexed from the United States of America in the 1830s. These same similar combinations, for instance, we've all had a Dole pineapple, right? Well, Mr. Dole was actually a guest of the Hawaiians. By the way, 200 years ago, the Hawaiians were feeding themselves and all their visitors. Fast forward, after Mr. Dole turns the Kingdom of Hawaii into a Republic of Hawaii and now a state of Hawaii. He literally turned it on his own with 13 businessmen, and then the military took it over. And presidents of the United States of America have gone out there and said, this was wrong. Here's an apology letter. Stand your country, stand your kingdom back up. And the Hawaiian Kingdom is a very, very special part of this ecosystem that is leading the charge to stand up on what it had before. It had its own land management systems before. It had its own currency before. It was called the Dala, the Hawaiian Dala. So imagine all of these different countries coming together with their own systems that does identity, that does financial systems. We're talking everything. Again, commodities, equities, currencies in real time. There's no funny business behind the scenes. There's no brokers that are making something on the float and systems that can just hide this and do that. Or even companies that can do splits or sell multiple things that they've already sold to somebody else. So these countries are standing up and creating a pact or a union, kind of like the European Union. The European Union was formed in the Second World War with about 6 or 7 countries. Now it's 27 countries. And ultimately, what do? They have the euro and they have GDRP. GDRP is doing something similar to what the Pacific Union will do around privacy, around travel. It's a human right to have privacy and travel. And how do they do it? They basically take over a financial system where they align together, they unite together. The currencies, whether they're digital currencies or physical assets, and then tie in the vendors that will actually say, we will accept a decentralized identity. We will accept payments and rewards and dispute agreements. We're talking about replacing the SWIFT system, ACH, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, all together, literally. And all these vendors have to do is come in and say, hey, we're willing to say, yes, we'll take decentralized identity. Let me show your listeners what decentralized identity really is. Imagine your phone or a card, okay? And actually, I'm not even going to do it here. I'm going to jump into something that relates to America, since this is particular to America. I'm going to go to America.
This is so interesting. I'm always mesmerized when you explain all of this to us, because, Trump is going to be the next president of the United States of America, but we're still headed for very tough times. And potentially a digital ID.
I don't know if you saw, but on July 4th, the same month, just like 18 days ago, we announced that on this beautiful 248th birthday, the Republic of the United States of America was restored. A lot of people in your circles may talk about this, but this is actually the technology and how it can actually be realized. So for those of you that are like, you've got a Clear phone, which comes with Clear Life. For those of your listeners that are just like, I'm interested in this, but I'm still in the iPhone world, you can download things like Hawaiian Life. So if you go to your store and like, here, I'll even show you. So if you go to Hawaiian or Hawaii.country, there's a little app that you can download and you can start logging in and actually using this same system. And you basically get cryptographic keys and then you get digital assets. And it's really super duper simple on how it works. Like 30 seconds, you can be set up. 3 minutes, you can literally not only have your own identity, but you can actually create a company. The company could have cars. You could issue license plates just like these. A license plate just like this. This is actually in the state of Texas, which we'll talk about in a second. But this license plate, if you actually scan it, it'll pull up specifics about that vehicle. Is it licensed? Is it registered? Is it insured? Is it stolen? Who are the drivers without disclosing their identity? Who are the owners without disclosing their identity? Is it financed without disclosing who it's financed with? So you share all the data with humanity, but the private data just stays. But if someone thinks that they have a right to be able to see it, they can go ahead and say, I want to verify your insurance company. I want to verify if you're actually the driver. I want to verify XYZ. And it actually pushes a push to the other individual, and they can actually verify that it's them, and then it pushes back over. Instead of doing the crazy digital ID, like I'm in a state, I believe that Utah is doing some crazy things, but I believe that they'll do the right thing before it's said and done. They're doing some things with digital ID, which will actually give a phone to an officer. And I'm not saying officers are wrong. As a matter of fact, my amazing foster father was an LA County Sheriff officer, and I wanted to be in law enforcement my whole youth until 16, and I've been doing this ever since. But the point that I'm driving at is an interaction with a law enforcement officer should not be the law enforcement officer, which is a public servant, keeping their identity private and the individual having to disclose who they are. Unless there's something that's like really done that's wrong, like, but there's due process and structure that has to happen. So not only are we seeing this within the Hawaiian Kingdom, but now we're seeing it within the American Republic ecosystem. So this is so the Hawaiian Kingdom and even it is a separate entity from the United States of America. People will disagree. Go do your research. And then the state of Hawaii, or excuse me, the state of Texas. So I'm actually going to pull up Texan.country. Texan.country is actually, there's about 200,000 people that want to turn Texas into Texan. And what that means is they can basically, in their constitution, the Texas Constitution, because Texas was a country before it was a state. And so there was actually a treaty with the United States, which, by the way, there was no treaty with the United States with Texas or with Hawaii. There was with Texas. But people have to vote to say we want to leave it. And while we were in Texas talking about the Texan, the state of Texas actually said, we actually want to be a part of this. We want to explore potentials. Now, they're not fully signed up. It's not done by any means because they have a ton of services. I'm talking complex services with lots of service providers, but I would tell you it's costing them, if not hundreds of millions, many tens of millions of dollars every year with multiple vendors. And what they're doing is simple things around registration, licensing, services, etc. But with this type of technology, where an individual logs in, they own their own identity, and they don't log in with usernames and passwords. They log in with a simple scan. And when they scan, it's actually cryptographically validating who they are. For instance, here in Utah, we've actually done 35,000 plus marriages that are cryptographically supported. And that's one of the services. So when you come into, let's jump into like this particular thing right here. So this is a marriage that everyone can see has happened, but they don't know who the individuals are, right? But if they want to know who they are, they can actually click on things and it actually pops into one of these individuals, and they can say, hey, I'll disclose it to you. So for instance, the X and the O's would actually turn into real names, or maybe birth dates would be shown, or XYZ things would be shown, or same types of things with parental control. So how is it that parents can actually teach their kids true and correct principles and then let them govern themselves in life and have the tools and technologies to do it? Well, if I showed you this little system here, you can see examples. I'm going to show you two separate systems.
So you're telling us that the whole key to being able to access this world, that you're showing us, is via the phone that you founded, the Clear phone.
Well, it's not just the Clear phone. It actually works on any phone out there in the world. It'll work on any Google phone, any Apple phone, and any Clear phone. And there's going to be some amazing things, like you can already see here. Why is this little X in the middle of it? And we look forward to showing you why something like that would actually tie in. So stay tuned. It's not done yet, but what you're seeing is literally the future of identity, of finance, of asset management, and even of voting. So some of the things that are going on right now with what they're trying to shut down, this is a system that is in parallel that can cryptographically validate not only how many votes there are, but it won't let people vote twice. And it won't let people vote if they're not in the right region. And it literally is real time. Like, I'll give you an example. So I won't talk about finances or assets or identity, which are massively important. But let's say that we actually figure out all the different folks that are running, okay? We don't really know because I don't know, today we've got a resignation letter. We don't know if it's real or not. But the way that people can vote, let's say we want to vote for Mr. Joseph A. Biden here. It would pop up a little code here. You grab a phone, and this particular thing is actually expired, but I'll show you how it actually works. It's just this simple. You basically use your fingerprint to validate who you are. This is 5-factor authentication. Says it's approved here, and it's done here. If this was actually a valid, we don't know who's actually running, so there's no valid ecosystem here. I want to point something else out to you as well, and your listeners. By the way, I really like what Michael Flynn stands for and some of these other folks, but Michael Flynn is all about ballot voting. You got to mail in, everybody actually physically, and I don't agree with anything that is not specifically verifiable. And what I mean by that is the Dominion voting systems, they can't be connected to the internet, because then the software, if you really look at the software, the developers behind it came out and were honest. It said in front of Congress under oath, they said, we were told to make the software to be able to do this. If you wanted to swing it this way, you could swing it that way. And so literally the voting systems that America uses, I'm not sure about Mexico. It'd be nice if your listeners actually Googled what voting systems Mexico uses. But Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they all use Dominion voting systems, and a large chunk of the parts around. But I would ask you this, if it's actually a law that these voting systems are actually tamper-proof, why is it? And I actually started Googling this, and I didn't show you earlier. Here, this is...
I love Just the News. That's one of my favorite news shows.
They're talking about how, the counties in Australia, the voting locations are affected by this outage. And they're specifically talking about how is it that a system that's not connected to the internet, like it doesn't have a physical cable connected to it, how is it that they're actually getting these updates? So, I promise you from some people would say you're not an expert. I would say that all I've done my whole adult life, over 30 years, is work in high-end security and high-end storage technology around architecture, around systems. It's all we've ever done. To the point where we said 15 years into it, in 2008, sell it, we're done. Because of how centralized systems, for instance, if we were penetrated, the company is named DirectPoint. If DirectPoint was penetrated, so they got into our systems, Because we have virtual private networks to all of our customers, they can also penetrate our customer systems. And what we started understanding was it doesn't even matter, because at the server networking gateway layer, the virtualization layer, all these different layers, they actually have abilities to actually access it remotely. BIOSes, CMOSes, VMs, operating systems, they all have backdoors. As much as I want to tell you that humanity is honest and transparent, I'm telling you from the actual server software. And some companies would say, nah, it's just Huawei that just does this. It's just the Chinese that does this. But let me tell you, the Cisco backdoors, and some of the big companies, I'm talking biggest top 5 huge companies, I won't say their names out loud. Oof, I mean, I would like to, but the bottom line is just trust me, these companies have built backdoors. And they've done it because it's the same thing that this little book, is this the Tools and Weapons book? Yeah, this little book, Tools and Weapons, spells out what a FISA request is and how often Microsoft, Facebook, Google, etc., they get these requests from the federal government to say, I want every single piece of data on this individual with this name, this phone number, and this email address, and you don't tell them that you're doing this. I don't know about you, but the founding fathers of the United States of America died to keep that from happening. I'm not talking about taxation without representation and tyranny. I'm not talking about all the other ridiculous things, voting. I'm talking about the simple things of privacy. And there's been a lot. I mean, this last month, Julius Assange was released after half of his life was basically taken. You've got people like Edward Snowden that was on the actual side of doing some of these things that said this is not right. And he literally left the Hawaiian Islands to go over to Russia to live his life. I've literally gone over to speak with Assange. I've literally gone over to speak with Mr. Snowden, which I believe both of them are heroes for putting out what is right. They sacrificed their own lives, their own posterity, their own abilities to have families, and the simple things that brings us joy here on earth.
You've actually spoken to Edward Snowden.
I'm not going to say that on your show, but I just told you that I went to Russia. What I will say is I've spoken directly many times to his attorney. You can put it that way. You can put your own dots together.
Okay.
And maybe in days I'll show you, I can show you certain communication, but it doesn't matter. If people don't believe what's going on right now, if you went and got vaccinated and feel good about it today, then
tell us what's going on in 2 sentences. What is going on right now?
it's the secret combinations. It is literally, here's the perfect proof point. So CloudStrike, okay? And I don't want to say bad things, especially that are literally tied into this. But I've personally been to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, in Davos. I've looked at, and there's some other ones I could tell you to watch out for other companies as well, but I won't on this, public, because these are companies that are publicly traded companies. A simple comment has ramifications because of how the systems are set up. But when we look at, is it really Vanguard that's one of the largest shareholders? This is actually it right here. BlackRock and Vanguard are the biggest shareholders of this publicly traded company. And when you start digging into who is actually behind these different ecosystems, and you don't believe me, just go and do your own search. It's literally a simple search. So, the net on what we think is the actual solution to it is these 3 phases. And we've actually executed through the first phase, which is actually in the Pacific, which is, again, more than half the world. It's frowned upon, it's left alone, it's neglected. We talk about developing countries. There are some basic things that are just not there. But I would argue that some of the people are more happy than the rest of the world. Vanuatu, literally, the original place that piggy bank came from. The word piggy bank and the tusks, it all came from there. 3,500 years, these amazing people have lived there, and they're known as the happiest people on earth. They don't have a lot. As a matter of fact, me and my family actually went through 2 cyclones that were category 5s within 1 week. They had power outages for 3 months. 3 months. This is a cash-based society that basically had ATMs that didn't have power, and you couldn't get the cash out of them. Even though people had money in their bank, they couldn't get to it. But yet, a couple weeks before all these things happened, a month before, we went through one of their main supermarkets and we sat down with the prime minister's brother and the owner of the stores and said, hey, if you had a phone, you could send money real time. All we have to do is take the Vanuatu dollar and back it. And the next thing you know is you're actually truly decentralized. That's what your Constitution says. That's what your forefathers wanted. Let's make it a reality. And so people are able to transact, because I found it mind-blowing. We're talking about 2 cyclones that are Category 5 cyclones. People may not have been through. I actually videoed driving around on a 4-wheeler with all these gear on with my boys, and literally driving around through the eye of this thing while it was going over us. The devastation is unseen. I've never seen anything in my life. Homes just gone. Billboards just torn off. The Chinese consulate's about the only thing that actually stood up down there. That's not true. There was other buildings.
But what will the phone do, Michael? What is the phone?
So this is what they were able to do, because there's a lot of clear phones down there. And those were in the days when we were just getting the apps going. People can actually transact. Why? Because the cellular towers were still up and people figured out how to get their phones to actually work. They could get their phones to actually connect to the cell tower and to transact. So they didn't rely on paper money in a paper-based society that had no power for the ATMs. That, and I remember we would literally just go in and just buy food. I mean, there were food that was available, but people couldn't get to their money. So that's just an example. But it's an example that's pretty relevant. I mean, we're talking about first world country today in America that's taken to its knees like a third world country like Vanuatu. Like literally. What happens if some of these systems that go down weren't travel, or they weren't voting systems, but they were life critical systems like supply chain or power or water systems? I mean, you think about it, and this is not far-fetched. I'm sorry. This is the world that I've personally lived in for 30 years. And I'm telling your listeners, there's 2 things that's going on, something that's physical and something that's digital, but they're colliding. They are literally going to control us with digital IDs and payments, and then biologics as well. These PCR tests that we took, they're DNA tests. And if you want to back up into this mess even further, BlackRock just bought Ancestry DNA, which we, Clear Health, made an offer about 3 years ago, primarily because my executive assistant went to go be the executive assistant for the CEO there. And we literally made a real good offer. I was from a math standpoint, they should have taken it, but they didn't. Why? Because their shareholders was actually BlackRock. And it just so happens that BlackRock just recently purchased them this last week. You don't believe me? Here, I'll just Google it.
No, we definitely believe you. I want everyone to understand that the first step is making sure that they have the Clear phone. In order to become decentralized, you have to have the Clear phone. Can you explain this?
Yeah. So wrap up this other BlackRock, $2.5 billion in debt. So like literally, it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. They're literally going into debt. They don't even use their own money to purchase all this. But when they purchase this, they're actually purchasing you. If you did a spit test, that's your DNA. And when people start understanding quantum entanglement, they're going to figure out biological, digital, and physical all coming together and then remote controlling it. If you believe in prayer, if you believe in mother's intuition, that's the same way that quantum entanglement works. And that's their big game. So, to answer your question, it's not just about a phone. Like you can go to, let's say, the Clear store, and we're actually sold out of most of our phones. So most of the phones, except for this model, and then like the Armor phone gone, some of these lower end phones gone. There's current phones here, the Freedom phone, the Hawaiian phone, and then 2 of the Clear phones are still left. These phones basically come with a software application like what I showed you before. Let me actually log into one of these environments. So I'll show you.
Do you have the 620 phone available?
I personally love it. I've used it for years, and it's a solid workhorse. There's a new version of it. It's the 624. So I just scan this with my phone. So just that fast. 5-factor authentication. I just logged into a backend of a jurisdiction. This happens to be the Hawaiian Kingdom, right? So I was personally adopted into the Hawaiian kingdom by the Hawaiians. It's called Hanaing. So they gave me a new name, which is a beautiful name with what it ties to. But my life as an American born in Utah, now my connection, and they actually go through, they made a song out of it. They actually go through these big genealogy tablets that would roll off on the table. And so this is how you plug in. And genealogy, or what they call whakapapa, which is family. That's what brings joy. That's what brings peace. Which brings happiness. If we don't screw it up, which, some of us do, but hopefully in time, as they say, the children can look to their fathers and the fathers can look to their children. For instance, just right minutes before we got on this call, a neighbor of mine, we found out that she passed away. I was wondering why there were so many cars when I drove to the office today out in front of her house. And amazing woman, healthy, kind. I don't even think, I think
Did she take the vaccine?
I don't know. And it's hard to go and say, did you do that? Because I was blessed with a wife that paid attention to vaccinations. And our beautiful family, none of our kids are vaccinated. And they're there's zero health issues, zero emotional issues, zero learning behavior issues. And when you start going through these simple things, for instance, the big conflicts that I've had within the jurisdictions that I'm in is like, did you vaccinate your dogs? Well, like, no, and you can't force us to do it. So people back in the day thought we were just crazy, but a lot of people now are thinking, wow, it's not just hundreds of thousands of people are dead. It's not just millions, but tens of millions of people are affected by this. And they're talking about, as time goes on, it's not just going to infect, death rates over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but we're talking about it's actually gotten into the DNA molecular system of the human. And so future generations that are byproducts of that particular individual is going to be affected. Now, do I believe that there's solutions to this? I do. But it ties back to these crazy conversations primarily around when we dig into these clear companies, there's a couple of them. And when you notice this one right here around health, so when we dig into this health side of it, and for those that actually really want to dig in and question it, come down and read this teal paper. It's 2 or 3 pages. There's a simple slide deck. And what it goes over is the ability to communicate with the body, and then the ability to actually use quantum entanglement to do certain things once the body's been communicated with. If you're sitting here thinking this dude is whacked and the stuff that he's talking about is just out there, this was well before the COVID nightmare. The companies, for instance, when you look at some of these, I'm going to jump back over to clear.co.com. When you look at some of the timelines here, but then you look at acquisitions. For instance, this company here was 2018. This was a telehealth company that we acquired as the Clear Companies. There was another one in the health industry at 2020 and another one in 2021. That's 3 companies that we've actually bought to roll out a technology that is supposed to hit the market in 2 years. But I can tell you that these are not hypothetical things. And when you dig into the different organizations, so for instance, I'll go back over to that Clear Health ecosystem. You can see the websites, you can see the products, you can see, some of this different stuff that we're talking about. It is very, very real. It's not, people say, well, I just believe in science. Great, you want to believe in science? Go. Science proves it. As a matter of fact, there are 3, maybe 4 PhDs in physics that built this stuff. And I'm talking some of the humblest, kindest, wisest, spiritually guided individuals I've ever met in my life, and their hearts are in the right place. Does it make it so that this stuff can actually work? What's a tuning chamber? What's DNA? What's the scanning? How does it actually work? We used to think that the remote tuning process had to be done with feces or with urine or with blood or with hair follicles or with saliva, but no, it can actually be done even simpler. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. But today, all I'm trying to say is the world is not just falling apart. It is a beautiful time to be alive. Even if you've taken the vaccine, it's a beautiful time to be alive. But we've got to be able to align spiritually to be in the right place from our hearts. I think a lot of the things that have vexed humanity ties to an emotional start. Literally, it ties to how we feel, how we think. Maybe it's not even how we feel and think about others, but how we think about ourselves. And then what the world would define as cancer, it just naturally starts growing, right? Well, there's some simple things to it. And I would say a lot of this stuff is ties to structure. A lot of us aren't healthy because our physical structure is off and we don't even know it. Nutrition, the physical body, but how can technology come together to actually help us in a positive way? And I believe it's right around the corner. But the sad thing is a lot of these secret combinations are also using it from a negative standpoint. What are they trying to do with it? They're trying to control our choices. They're trying to take away the gift that we've been given to be here on earth. Our Creator said, you know what? You're going to go down and get this physical body, and you as spirits are going to be able to make choices. And that's really what is being taken from us. But with systems like what we're talking about here, where our identity, our voice, our assets, our finances, all of it can be owned by the individual. And some jurisdictions are going to say, you know what, like maybe the state of Texas, maybe they just won't even get it. Maybe we have to go to the Texan ecosystem. So it's not actually, Texas. It's a whole new system, a new Texandillo, if you will, a new system where people can actually self-select and say, I choose to register my vehicle here. I choose to register my company here. I choose to pay people with this asset. I choose to actually use this as a land management system. Why? Because it's not tied to a county, it's the whole world. I choose to be able to pass assets to different generations in a certain way. I choose to have vehicles. Like I was just showing you over here? No, over here. I was just showing you a vehicle. So let's say this truck here is actually in Texas, but let's say I want to look at the registration on this puppy. Oh, I don't have a battery that's plugged in. Dang it.
That's okay. We only have 10 more minutes. Go for it.
Well, shoot. You know what? I can just plug this in real fast. I'm just not.
Every time we have these conversations, we could just go for hours and hours and hours, because the short-term answers are obviously making sure that our White House has a president who actually respects us, which is why I stand with President Donald Trump and his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio. However, how long will that last? 3 years, 4 years, 8 years? In the long term, our real problem is decentralization. That's going to be the major issue that we all need to solve, because right now, anything could get turned off at any time. And that's why it's so important to focus on decentralization, so that no one can silence you, no one can ban you, no one can cancel you. If you're decentralized, you control yourself, you control your assets, you control your vote, you control your car registration. Everyone should have their freedom. That's the God-given right, and it starts in your county. Did I say that right?
It starts with you as an individual. It starts with your own ability to believe that you are actually connected to God or whatever you think is your creator. If you struggle with that, that's a different conversation. But I, as a father, have seen life come into this world, and I don't question it. I know that there is intelligence that's out there. And when we understand that we're under God and not under government, we look at things differently. We question things differently. When a government tells you, go do this, and everything inside of your being is like an intravenous needle with something that's not defined or even known, it's so quick, just doesn't feel right. But okay, they're forcing me to do it. Sorry, you're not forced. Your choice is not taken. So, or you can go ahead and register your vehicle every single year, comply with their system, pay their fees, or you can literally get a simple plate that's organized. You have all your vehicles in one interface, and it's really simple. It doesn't expire every year. If you sell a vehicle, it expires. It's got a unique code that's unique to you. The profiling systems that drive around in the world can't just jack your data and your identity of where you're going, what you're doing, etc. Like just this one
Well,
year. Go
the
ahead.
issue is that America may be going bankrupt. Elon Musk just tweeted on X, where are we with the dollar value? Destruction, you might ask. What's the truth about the dollar, Michael?
All right. You want to go there, huh?
Yeah.
So
I
imagine.
mean, we don't have that much time, but
Okay. No,
I mean,
I'll go there real fast.
where are we going? And your clear phone is the key to everything. I want everyone to understand that this clear phone is the key to so much
So-
of what Michael Proper is talking about. You go to clear.store and you buy the clear phone now. It's the most important thing to make sure that you are decentralized. And then, of course, switch your service to phone123.com. Phone123.com. Buy your clear phone at clear.store and switch your service to phone123.com.
What if
Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. You're such a doll. What if I told you that before COVID broke out, I personally went and spent months, like over a month in Saudi Arabia, over a month in Russia, in India, in China, in these different countries that now the world knows as BRICS. And in October, just in 60 days away, they're going to be announcing a system, which is a system that will pair with the digital world, one-to-one, easy, same tech, etc. But what if I told you that we're working directly with governments and directly with these different European Union alternatives, like the Pacific Union, these different countries, these different ecosystems, and then tying in a new currency system that is actually pure silver and pure gold, and then digitally receipting it where people can actually transact one country to another country all the way across the ecosystems. And the people that are behind it are actually want to free their people. Like the Mexican ecosystem, and I don't know if you know this, but Trump was potentially killed. He was almost killed. This year, this lady was elected on June 2nd, just last month. But up to that, every one of these people died. Not potentially died, not potentially assassinated. They were assassinated within 2024. The last 7 months, they were killed. Every one of them killed. They were running for president. She's the only one that made it. This country actually wants to provide transparency for their citizens. And what happens if a country like Mexico and a state today, maybe a country in the future, tomorrow, actually says we're going to validate identity a way where the individual owns it, but we as a state can actually verify it. And when you got the drug cartel, they're saying, okay, well, we know that we're not hiding, but we also know that we can actually have our own assets and they don't get taken. So it's the best of all the worlds. It's the best of over government, overreach, and then the crazy stuff like Monero and the crazy crypto folks. It's a beautiful path right in the middle of it where people, like amazing people like these people, can come together. And the stuff that I'm showing you is not live. It's not approved. It's not launched. And you need to know we're not creating a currency. We're not creating a stock. We're not providing tax guidance. But what we are doing is we're creating an ecosystem where people can actually off-ramp off of the existing fiat system. Who knows how much dollars are out there? Most people don't even know that the United States of America gave Taiwan the printing presses to actually print over the years when they left China. And there was a $91 trillion settlement between China, Taiwan, and the United States to get those printing presses back and other priceless artifacts from Taiwan to China. And there's reasons why there's speculation around World War III starting because China goes into Taiwan and takes it back. So there is a future financial system coming. It is better than the existing system. These credit card systems we have are jokes. I mean, how many times do you as an individual, whoever's listening to this, how many times did you go to your bank and say, I didn't make that transaction. Oh, I got to get a new card, or my purse was stolen and I got to get a whole new life. My identity, my cards, everything gone. But I, as an individual, go and register in all these other systems. Why not control and manage it all in one system? Whether that's within the United States of America as an American, or you have your own, you've got your own ability to vote. your own birth certificate, marriage certificate. Someone can't take it from you. You can go to a bank and say, this is my new name. I can verify it. By the way, literally 35,000 different situations around the world, right out of the state that I'm in. First state ever to do it. From amazing people in the state that literally said, this is the future. We're willing to take a risk on it. And now the counties are putting cash into the bank because people from around the world are coming to them to say, you know what? I live in Toronto or Ontario, Canada, and to be able to get a marriage license, I actually have to get vaccinated, and I don't want to get vaccinated. So I don't want to get a marriage license, but I want to get married. I don't care if it's a dude and a dude or a woman and a woman. All that stuff doesn't make any sense to me. But if people want to get married and make a commitment, one person with another person, commitment under our Creator to say, I want to love you and cherish you and take care of you. I don't know if they say just for this life or if they believe in eternity. That is something that we as individuals should be able to have on our own terms, whether it's an asset, whether it's a finance. And this is the future financial system. You know, you talk about the Jubilee and other things like that. This is really a system that can enable that. I don't know if your listeners really understood this voting system, but imagine in America, you go to your state, you go to your county, you click, 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 you vote, it's done, real time, totally transparent. Everyone in the world can see it. If you even change your vote, you can change your vote and they can see everything happening in real time. I've seen people say, you know what, I'm going to grab tons of phones. I'm going to actually put them in backpacks. I'm going to carry them all around. I'm going to create all these identities. What people are going to figure out is the simple services around reputation is actually done off of a score that the individual should own, not some environmental secrets code thing that they're basically baking up, but the individual should own, and the data that they want to share that ties off of it. Where you go, what you do, what you text, not what you do, not the specifics, not who you called, but that you made a phone call, not who you texted or what you texted, but that you sent a text, not where your location is, but that you're moving around. Computers they can't spoof this stuff. Machine learning can't spoof it. Artificial intelligence can't spoof it. So I hope your listeners are understanding, one, what we're seeing with these attacks, with this crazy stuff that's happening with, let's see if I can find it, with this CrowdStrike junk and, you know, voting systems that are being compromised. If you're not putting two and two together right now, the voting systems are not going to work like they did before. And if you're already believing the voting systems and you haven't figured this out, for instance, I went to whitehouse.gov when supposed President Obama got supposedly elected. I went to the White House's site to actually download his birth certificate. And whoever mocked it up left the layers within the Adobe file. So in a PDF, they think they compresses it. No, they didn't. You can literally open it with Photoshop and see all the manipulation. They actually made a birth certificate out of the Hawaiian Islands, out of the supposed state of Hawaii. And literally, Obama was not a citizen. You know,
Obama was not a citizen of the United States of America when he was born.
No, and so many people would say, well, who cares? And I would be one of those people that says, who cares? If they're going to add value and if they're going to serve one another, this world knows no bounds. This is one world and one earth that we all get the opportunity to live on. This is our earth. It's not Mars. It's not shoot rockets off and do all these. We need to take care of this amazing earth. And when you really dig into it, I'm going to look at the earth from, what is it, Google? What's the earth?
So you're saying that there could be more outages, that this was just a test of what they could do to us in the future, basically.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, and Microsoft is a compromised company. They're run probably by high-level intelligence groups, and or definitely they are getting information and or direction from high-level intelligence groups around the world. And that's what I really saw with Google. My friends founded Google. And then 20 years later, I mean, 20 years later, they do. They're not in control of it anymore.
Yeah.
high-level intelligences, and that's the problem. We, the people, are supposed to be in control of our beloved United States of America. We, the people, are supposed to control our counties, our cities, our towns around the world, not just in the United States of America. We, the people, are supposed to have our God-given right to freedom, and we don't.
We, the people, have a right to privacy and a right to travel this amazing world. And the secret combinations want to make us think that we can't, that we speak different languages, that we have different skin colors, that we're different. We are not. We are all brothers and sisters, all of us. And they don't want us to think that way. They don't want love to prevail. They don't want peace to prevail. Why? Because when there's war, there's confusion and there's mystery and there's margin. Look at what's happening with the war in Ukraine. Look at the mystery and the margin and the money and the laundering that's happening there. Just dig into what the folks that are actually behind it. You know, if people can't see this and it's plain as day, then go get your next, well, I won't even be rude about it, but please wake up. Your future generations depend on it. And that's the most important gift that we've been given, is future posterity and our ability to procreate, which is a gift that is shared with us. You know, you talked earlier, I asked you earlier, Karine, why are you doing this? And you said, for my daughter. And there were specific reasons that I think are sacred to you that I won't go into. But as a mother, and I also believe it's the women and the mothers that will actually help a lot of this stuff become a reality. For instance, some of the stuff in Mexico, some of the stuff in Texas, some of the stuff in Hawaii, in Vanuatu, it's from the ladies that'll pay attention. And in a lot of these decentralized ecosystems, especially in the Pacific, it's matriarchal driven. The women are the ones that actually do a lot of the decision making. And in a lot of societies, that's been poo-pooed. It's been shunned. It's been, you know, and what they do is they switch it around to break down the family to say, no, the women need to go to the jobs. The women need to make money. The women, no, we're built differently. Women, I think you're amazing with the stuff that you're doing, but I also would say it takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on you to be able to do some of the stuff you're doing. And I'm going to come back to you here. It literally, if you would share your image here, however you do it. There you are. It's not easy to do what you're doing. You're dealing with the garbage in DC. You're dealing with typical.
I'm dealing with pure evil and so much ego. There is so much ego and so much competition, and people are not mentoring. People are not helping each other. There's ego and there's competition, and everybody just wants to make as much money as they can, potentially get as famous as they can, and have as much power as they can. Whereas all I want, because I've had all that, I super don't care about it. I want my freedom. I want my freedom of speech. When I got banned on YouTube, I made the commitment that I will be a stand up for freedom. I want my freedom. When Google turned into evil hands and I got banned on YouTube and my friends who founded Google didn't care, that's when I decided to move to Washington, D.C. and fight. The good fight.
And I know,
for freedom.
I travel there once every 6 months. There's this thing called the Global Blockchain Association, which tries to define the future. And it literally is saying, you know, government is here and the crypto folks are here. And how do we find systems in the middle that will actually help us to govern better? And I can't get out of that city fast enough. So I'm grateful that people like you dedicate your time to saying, I'll be here, I'll be in the mess, I'll understand what's happening real time, and would actually take time to understand the things we're talking about now. Because if people would just listen to this simple message that we've just gone through, you see answers for voting, you see answers for identity, you see answers for finance. And by the way, the financial system doesn't have the whole cost structure. It's real time. The fees can be zero if countries want it to be, or they can create a revenue stream. They could literally run their countries. Most countries' GDP and actual governance structure could be run. The court systems, the roads, the policing could all be run on just the same fees that Visa is taking out every day. So literally, there's almost seven.
That's so shocking.
Think about
The
this. This is the
bankers
math.
are the
Yeah, you
problem.
got it. It's not just the bankers, it's the money changers, it's the controllers. There's a reason why somebody in a book talked about and got so pissed and threw the tables and said, this isn't right with the
Jesus
money
got
changers.
angry at the money changers.
You got it. There's a reason why.
They make the money. You're not supposed to. If you're Christian, you're not supposed to make money as a money changer.
Well, and
You're supposed to give loans without charging an interest rate.
but think about it. Just think about it this way. Yeah. And that's actually how I was giving a speech in front of all these Islamic banks in 2017, 2018. And that's when they actually started going through, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and they literally, because the things you're talking about with interest rates, they don't do. You're right. But I'm not saying that money can't be had or made, because that's how the world goes round. But what I'm saying is the $7 billion a day that transfers, the 2.4% that Visa or MasterCard, American Express, or Discover gets on average is $336 million a day. Now think about that. We can remove all of that just by everyone here adopting a system like this. And it's not hard. 30 seconds to download. Grab your iPhone, download Hawaiian Life. Start logging into some of these systems. You can use this today. So,
Or buy the Clear phone at clear.store. Did I say that right?
You got it. I've actually got your little thing is flowing here. It's clear.store/discount/Corrine USA.
Okay, so it's clear.store/discount/Corinne USA, CORINNE USA,
Yeah.
and you get $50 or $100 off.
Yeah, they'll actually save $100 on a phone. So
Okay, so this phone is the key to decentralization. This is the most important phone to have. Get rid of your iPhone, because your iPhone can get turned off at any time. I have photos disappear, I have videos disappear. I'm in a different situation because I make my money using my phones.
With
But
iPhones,
everybody does.
you don't own your phone, let alone your data. You literally don't even own the hardware that you think you bought. Your license agreement says it's still their hardware. When you go get it worked on, the data on it is you give it to them. When you upload an email or a photo into their systems and you put your passwords into their systems, people are fooling themselves if they think they own their data. So what this is ability to move off of Google and off of Apple into a clear ecosystem where you can actually own your own data and your own identity, and you can validate who you are. You can validate your reputation. You can validate your education. You can validate your income. All of these things without sharing the data with them. Right now, if you want to validate that stuff, they call your employer. They call your school. They check XYZ. But really what they're doing is they're actually logging into your bank, and they're seeing your transactions, and they're seeing your credit, and they're seeing what other systems profile you to be. You be you. The future is you be you. The future is the new millennium is here now. These are the systems for it. The people that have ears to hear will hear this. The people that have eyes to see will see this. All you have to do is use these different life apps. The life app from the Hawaiian Islands, the new one from the Texas ecosystem, which I don't know. I hope it's the state. It would be awesome if it's the state. But there's some amazing people who are also working on that. But if it's not particular states, it'll be native environments that are sovereign, that were taken over long ago, that have been ignored. They've been oppressed. We think that vaccines are just hitting now with COVID. The Cherokees, the Chickasaws, the Navajos, the Kunas, the Hopis, they have been vaccinated out the wazoo. They have massive billboards. They are so afraid of XYZ virus, and they think some needle is the solution. But all it's done is it's taken their ability to reproduce. It's taken their lifespans, shortened them. It's given them diabetes. And I would argue some of the things around that are diet. The food that they're eating, because they're not growing their own food. You look at what's happened in the Hawaiian Islands. 200 years ago, they had their own monetary system, their own land management system, their own food systems. They could feed themselves totally and all their visitors. And nowadays, they're 100%, 90% on the government. Literally $3 billion of food is imported a year just to Oahu. Just to Oahu, 85% of all the food to all the Hawaiian Islands is imported every year. What happens if supply chain breaks down? We just saw this last week. All of the flights broken down. You're saying, well, I was just impacted from here to here. What happens when it takes, and the shipping companies, Freeport container ports, and these are servers that go fully offline. They don't come back up. And what happens when the data doesn't come back up with them? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not talking about EMP blasts. We're talking about a little security patch update. Please listen to these things. We've dedicated our lives to help provide guidance for humanity. We're not here to do it for a ton of money. Has it been hard? Yeah. Have we been blessed beyond means? Yeah. Like, we've been able to throw almost $27 million into the development of the stuff you're talking about with just people that come out of the woodwork that are saying, I believe in this. I can tell somebody about this, or I believe in this. Here's a couple $1 million. We didn't even ask. Or simple truths around providing value to others and then being able to be blessed by doing it. And that's why we're here, is to be able to serve others. And through so doing, we may find out who we are. It may be a difficult road. It may be a crazy road. We may screw up and make mistakes, but hopefully through it, we get enough time. Like my neighbor, I don't know, she took her last breath yesterday. Heart of gold. Heart of gold. So please use every day that you've been given. I don't know, for those listeners that are here that actually still want to, I've got another little, let's see if I can.
Can you come back? Will you come back in 30 minutes? Come back in 30
but I'll come back. As a matter of fact, there's a town hall meeting tomorrow. If your listeners want to jump on that, or if you want to jump on it.
How do we find you?
It'll stream on these same things, or if you go to digitalworld.earth, you can kind of see it. But
Okay, we have to end this, but come back in 30 minutes if you can.
I want people to think about. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Much love.
God bless you. God
You
bless
too.
you. Come back in 30 minutes if you want. God bless you.
Talk to you later.
I think it's so important to talk about how to protect yourself in case there's an emergency. Everyone needs to